Okay, hello everybody. This is Mike Coletta with Mike Coletta Images. I've seen a lot of skin retouching done lately, well, really over the past several years, and I couldn't really figure out what it was. I knew it was frequency separation, but it was more of it was almost like an overly blurred, but yet extremely sharp way of doing it. And I've been using frequency separation for several years now, and mine never came out like that, so I couldn't really figure out what it was. Well, in a group today, somebody had posted an image that had this kind of look, and Michael Anthony Photography kind of filled me in on the method that they were using, which I just tried myself, and it is definitely not a good look for skin retouching. It's a much faster approach, but it is not a good way of doing it, I would say. So, anyways, um, this here's Hayden. We did a shoot in Orlando, shot a bunch of people. She was one of them. I just had this on my hard drive and decided to grab it. I haven't retouched any of them. So we're just going to use her for today. Um, First, I'm going to run this from Bridge into Photoshop. Wow, really slow. Come on. Okay. So now that we are in Adobe Camera Raw, as you can see, I've already done some color adjusting and things like that. I kind of like the vibe that it was going with, so I've pasted this to all of her images, but we are going to go down here. I have already saved this as a preset for later. So we'll reset the camera raw defaults, and that's out of camera image. So we'll do some slide adjusting here, maybe bring the exposure down a hair, and actually everything that was done in that preset I don't really want to mess with because that's what it'll look like on the back end, but I am just going to lower the exposure, maybe I don't know, a third of a stop or so. Get a little bit more detail in the skin, and we can always play around with that later. So from here, I like to double check down here on the bottom, open that up, make sure that we are opening as smart objects, and in here you can have your color space set up. sRGB is what I prefer to work in because that's usually the output. Let's do 16-bit channel here, hit OK, and let's go ahead and open this image. Alright, here we are. This is a medium raw, by the way, because of the client that I was shooting for. It's never mind why, but there's a reason for it. I typically shoot in full, high res, raw, but this is different. Anyways, doesn't matter. So from here, what I noticed, kind of the wrong way of doing it is if you Command J and double click your layers and stack them up twice. These are both smart objects, and that's why they have the little icon in the corner. The cool thing about a smart object is you can just double click it and it'll take you back into Camera Raw, which is a nice feature. Now Photoshop has, in CC actually has a Camera Raw filter, so you know that's kind of a thing in the past, but it's just been my workflow for years, so we are figured I'd just show you that. Anyways, so we have our base layer here. I just Command J twice to duplicate them like so. I'm going to highlight both of these, come up to Layer, Rasterize, and I'm going to rasterize those smart objects and turn them into regular layers. So here we go. So the way that I see people doing it a lot that I really don't think gives good results is it looks like they're going to, on this base layer here, we're going to turn off this upper layer. On this base layer, here we go, filter, blur, Gaussian, I'm not really sure how you say it, but that blur. And then pretty heavy-handed, let's say around, I don't know, let's go 18. This way it's, it's blurry, but you can still see some of the shape there. We're going to run with that. Next, you would turn on this layer, go to Image, Apply Image, and then you're going to want it to be affecting the second layer down here, right here, so make sure it's a 2023 copy, 2023 copy, cool. They were doing add, scale of 2, and inverted, and basically that's giving you the high pass filter, okay? Then coming down here, dropping it to linear light on your blending mode, and then inverting it. Wait, that did not work. Let's go back. Let's not invert it. In fact, let me just do this all over again. Right click, image layer, rasterize smart object, bottom, blur, run that blur, top one. Oh, I know what I did. Image, apply image. I don't normally do this, so forgive me for that little mess up. Okay, right back to where we were, all settings right. What they did is you get rid of this bottom layer. Okay, so now it's just merged onto the top one. Now we would set it to linear light. And now it's an obvious high pass look. But if you invert that, it's going to give it this super soft look. And then throwing a... Shit, I did it again. Oh. Let's go back here. Okay. While we're here on the inverted layer, you need to blur this. So blur, and then you want to do about a third of what you did before. So it was at 18, so let's do 6. Okay, now that's blurred. Now we will invert it by hitting Command I. I'm going to throw a layer mask on it right there. Bring in the white. If the white has the box around it, you can actually just hit Command I again, and that's going to fill it with black and hide it. Okay, now we are back to what the image looked like initially, right? So now what people are doing, just with those simple steps, is coming in with a brush at 100% and basically just painting in. Since this is black, this needs to be white over here. If it's not, you can hit this and it's going to give you defaults. And they're just painting on the skin, okay? And kind of going around the lips, and around the eyes, and painting everything else, okay? So that, and then that's it. Okay, so that right there is the frequency separation that I'm seeing a lot of people use when they say frequency separation. Right? Before, after, before, after. So that whole thing takes about, what, 5 minutes? Yeah, to get good results, you are not going to get it in 5 minutes. So this is not a good way of doing it. This is not a high-end way of retouching. So I just want to start off by saying, let's not do that. Let's get out of that habit. So let's start over again. We're going to do the same thing. We're going to Command J twice. If you're working in smart objects, you need to rasterize these. They're both selected down here. Rasterize under layer, smart object. That's going to clear them both up. Let's turn off the top layer. On this base one, we are going to do our blur again. Gaussian blur. I like to do about 14. Hit OK. This top one we're going to turn back on. We're going to do a similar thing, but we're going to go apply image, scale to offset 128. Okay, this is going to be subtract instead of add, and we need to make sure it's on the same one, not inverted. Okay, so now this is a different way of kind of giving the high pass. Now I don't really understand like the algorithms and all the stuff and what it's actually doing in this. I just know it gives good results. So yeah, so you want to have blending mode set to subtract, 100% opacity, scale is at 2, offset is 128. Make sure that you are going on the layer below the high pass. Okay, now on this one we will drop it down to linear light as well, and that's going to cancel them out, but we still have both layers here. Now, I know that this is more of a color layer here on the base, and you can mess with some of your coloring. I honestly just use the top layer, and it might be several extra steps than most would want to do, but to me, using the healing brush is much better on this frequency separation layer. So I'm just going to use the healing brush here. We're going to start out by zooming way in, possibly even more, getting a super small brush. This up top has to be set to current layer, and then basically we're just going to start using the healing brush. So I'm selecting here, painting here, selecting here, painting here, selecting here, painting here, selecting here, painting here. And you have to go through and do this to all of the imperfections. This takes forever, but it works really well. Now this is up to taste, and depending on what type of portrait you are doing, you might not need to go as far, but if you're doing like a true beauty high-end retouch, you can go really far with this, and it takes quite some time. But it works really well. So I am going to do this for the next probably 20 minutes or so, and I will get back to you in a second. And one thing you really want to do is make sure that you are sampling from a very similar area. So like in these marks here, I want to go just right next to it and just grab that spot right next to it. So it still has texture. We're just getting rid of these little bumps, these little, it's basically all highlights and shadows. So we just want to create a little bit of a smoother texture in that stuff. And if you're not familiar with how to use the healing brush in the first place, this particular one is the regular healing brush, not the spot, not the patch tool. Patch tool can work, spot tool, spot healing brush can work as well. But I just like this because I get the most control out of it. So I have to actually pick with option where I want to select from. So right here I'm going to select there, boom, and then paint right there, boom, paint right there. Select, paint right there, select, paint right there. Okay, now that we've done that, we can get back to the next step. As you can see, it takes quite some time, and there's really no other way around it that I know of. But doing it through the frequency separation like this when using the healing brush, it just merges the pixels so much better and so much cleaner than if you were just using a healing brush on its own layer. So that, you know, that's why I like doing it this way. I feel like you just get a much cleaner image. So now that we're done, we can check out our before and after by clicking these on and off. So before and after, before and after. We'll zoom out, before and after, before and after. So what you may notice now is you're like, well, it's blotchy. There's all these like dark spots and it's not really smooth and things like that. Especially like if you look in this area right here, you can see this really well. So without it, and I kind of clean up these little blemishes in here. And now you got this like, oh yeah, there's a little dark spot there and a dark spot there and that wasn't there. And this kind of looks a little patchy in here and you know, that's not good. Well, we're going to fix that. Another cool thing is you can just do a stamp visible on this. So option, clicking here to the drop down menu, merge visible, is going to take everything below that, stamp it out, and give you a clean layer. So with that done, you can just kind of double up, Command J twice, and you can do this over again if you wanted to maybe separate it into several different times of doing it so you can control it better. That's totally cool. I do that all the time. Otherwise, you could always, if it was too heavy, you can put it into a folder right here and then lower opacity if you like. But I think this is going to be good. So we'll take the group back off. Oops. Come on now. Yeah, we'll leave the group on. Anyways, okay. So now that we have our blemishes removed and it's gotten rid of a lot of the flaws in the skin, now we are going to do the real magic. So I like to do curves, dodging and burning with curves. I feel like you have much more control over a gray layer, which is what a lot of people do as well, because you can lower the opacities on each one, you can stack and do a whole bunch of different ones or whatever it may be. It's just more control. Forgive me, I'm over here sipping on coffee and I have a stuffed nose, so I sound horrible, so my bad. Anyways, here we go. Right down here, we're going to start with a curve layer. We're going to do a small up curve, grab them from the midtones right there in the middle, about like that. Command I is going to invert it. And this needs to be above the group. So we're going to drag it above the group. There we go. So it's inverted, you can't see it. Now we're going to do one more, just the opposite. Grab the midtones, bring them down. About there. Command I is going to invert it. Can't see either one. I'm going to call this up. I'm going to call this down. Boom. Okay. Now we are going to do B is going to bring us to our brush. We want to make sure that we are on our brush tool. Up here, my settings that I really like are opacity of 100 and flow of 3%. And you got to make sure you hit this little icon here, and that's going to make your brush have pressure sensitive. I use a Wacom tablet. I don't see how you could do this without it, but some people do. I can't. So, anyways, now that we have our brush, we have it set to the right settings, we can zoom way in. We are on white here because we were on black down here. What the flow does set up like that is it allows you to kind of keep painting on a spot. So say I pick right here, and I'm going to hold this pen down on the tablet, and I'm just going to color back and forth. And you can see the more I color, the lighter it gets. Okay? Whereas opacity, you have to lift your brush and set it down each time you want it to get darker and darker and darker. So I like this because it's more of like if you were really coloring with like colored pencils or something like that. The more you color, the harder you press, the more it's going to affect it. Alright, so now going in here, this is where we really clean up and get nice smooth skin. So I'm going to go with a really small brush, as you can see, and you can see where it's you know, dark and light in some spots here. So we are on the up curve lightening things, and I'm just going to pick these little spots and slowly start just coloring them. Real soft, real slow, coloring them in, and lightening all those little blotchy spots. Because really everything you have when it comes to any imperfections in skin, or really anything in a photograph, it's all highlights and shadows, right? So now we're just we're not merging pixels, we're not doing anything really destructive, we're just kind of playing with the exposure in certain spots that we are choosing to lighten and darken. So I'm just going to come in here and color these small, tiny little spots. And I'll jump around a lot. I think it's good to zoom out, zoom back in, kind of check your work. If you're doing something that takes a really long time and really high-end beauty thing, it's good to walk away from it and come back and kind of see what you're doing. But the other good thing about using curves like this is you can just do layers and layers and layers, so you can keep it really, really minimal on each layer, which helps later on if you want to pull some things back. So I'm just going to continue on in here and painting these darker splotches a little bit lighter. And then often I'll just go down and I'll click on my down, and then, as you can see right in here, there's like a lighter spot, so I'm going to color that a little darker. Color that spot a little darker, right? And obviously this is a highlight here, so we want to make sure that we keep the highlight. The makeup artist put like a nice highlighter on her and on her nose and on her cheek, so we want to make sure that we still show that, but you want to have it nice and smooth and not blotchy. I'm going to come in and just kind of darken these spots a little bit where it's really light, and just kind of working back and forth. I'm going to go back to my up curve, get these spots, and again, this is very time consuming, but it's very effective. It works really well. It comes out very high-end looking, in my opinion at least. From other retouchers that I've talked to, this is a pretty standard way of doing things.
It only occurs when you love something more than you love yourself. I doubt you've ever dared to love anybody that much.
And again, after all that micro stuff is done, you know, you're all up in here and you're fixing all this and fixing all this, come back and kind of look at it as this. And I'm like, okay, well, to me, like, this looks too dark right here. That transition looks too dark. So I'm going to get a bigger brush. I'm just going to kind of soften this transition, this shadow right here. And, you know, I'm painting really, really lightly. I'm not pressing on the tablet too hard. I'm just going nice and soft, going over. And this allows me to get nice, clean, smooth highlights. Or, I'm sorry, highlights and shadows. The transitions. Kind of lift that up a little bit. so it's not such a stark difference. I don't want the highlight to be like wham, you know. But it still looks a little splotchy, so I'm gonna come back in a little closer. Right in here, it looks like it could use a little bit of lightening. But I think we're getting pretty close on this cheek here to how it needs to be. Yeah, so for now, I think that I'm going to keep it about like that. There's a little line there. Let's keep it there. I'm going to move on now. Let's go in. As you can see here in the forehead, there's, you know, kind of this light shape in here and in here and in here. And hopefully you can see this stuff. It's very, very subtle, but to me, that's what really makes it look good, is when you pay attention to that much detail. So I'm going in with the light, and I'm just going to kind of fill this in, color it a little bit lighter on the darker parts, color in the lighter parts with my down curve a little. I just want it to look even. I want to make sure that I maintain what the lighting did when I took the shot. I do not want to mess up or change the way that I lit it, which in this case was just a gridded medium softbox, nothing special. Like I said, the shot is not fantastic. It was just what was right there in my bridge at the time. It's starting to look good, but after I back up, especially looking way back, you can kind of see it's a little splotchy. So I'm going to come back in, get a little bit of a bigger brush, and do a little bit more of a, I guess you could say like a global dodge on these spots. Kind of look at it from a bit more pulled back, and you can see the subtle splotchy parts. Paint those in really lightly, and comes out looking really good. A little bit of spot here. Now the cool thing when you're doing this too is like right in here there's that spot that's pretty light. It's almost like a little bit more texture. And I could just paint that down, or I could just go back down to this, hit J, go back to my brush, and just clear that spot up real fast. So it's nice to have it set up like this because you can always go back and add on to more of your healing brush frequency separation layer. Okay, I think we are looking pretty good. Now, I wanted to keep, I mean, you want to show these little lines in the lips like that. She has a little smile line here. You want to make sure you keep this. Um, Under eye bags, like I see these get removed a lot, and it just makes people look like aliens. This girl's really young. She's like 14, so she has great skin to start off with, but for the purpose of showing the retouch, you know, we're pushing it a little bit further than she probably really needs. But you want to try and keep everything natural, There's still a ton of texture in here, as you can see, but it's not that like weird, blurry, not blurry, overly sharpened. I don't know, whatever that other high pass inversion thing does. It's weird. There's a few other spots I see now that I'm looking back on it. Maybe this little dark spot here. I'm gonna lighten that right in there. Maybe a little bit of that action there. Maybe a little bit here. But yeah, so that looks pretty good. There's a couple little light spots there. Let me darken those. Right there. And it's weird, sometimes you don't even notice this, and then you look right back at it and you're like, oh yeah, okay, we gotta do some more. But it helps to really pull it back and see it as a... Often when you look at something like a thumbnail, you end up seeing more than when you're zoomed in. Okay, darken that right there. Cool. So we're not going to worry about hair down here, shoulders, anything. There's a little bit of a bra strap showing here. I wish I would have told her to take off these necklaces. I don't like them at all, but whatever. That's besides the point. This is about the skin retouch. So we're going to do a little bit of eye stuff. I'm just going to do another up curve. I love curves for everything. Like for coloring, for obviously skin retouching, but I kind of just use curves for literally everything. Contrast, you name it. So this, I'm going to go and put this back up to flow 100, take that off. I'm just going to paint in a little bit of an up curve here, right in the middle. Just brighten them up just a little. You could do something like, so this one looks too bright now, so I'm just going to go hit X. I'm going to go to like 50% and paint that back to 50% from what I just did. It looks a little bit more natural. Aaron Nace on Flern, one of his tutorials I thought was pretty good was you could actually do like a blank layer. Oops. Blank layer here, do it on white, color this in with just white. Do it nice and sloppy for you. Same thing on the other side. And then take that, drop it down to soft light on the blending mode. And then if you double click right over here, like in the bar to the side, it's going to pull up this layer style. And on this bottom one, if you hit option, you can split this little thing in half and basically you drag it way over to there, and then you can play with this one to drop it down. That's kind of full strength right there. And what it's doing is it's making it only affect the white in the eye. So that's still a little strong. The more this way you pull it, the more it like isolates it. And then this kind of softens it. So, maybe somewhere in there, and that really brings some detail out in there. It's a nice little trick. As you can see, it's way too far. It looks surreal. So lower the opacity to your liking. Maybe turn on and off. I don't know, maybe somewhere in there. Maybe we'll lower the lightning layer. Give that a little bit more love. Somewhere in there. Cool. I do want to do some. So I'm gonna stamp visible option. Click this little drop down. merge visible while holding Option, and that's going to give me a stand visible. I can get rid of all this, kind of show you the before and after. So out of camera, after the retouch. Out of camera, after the retouch. Out of camera, after the retouch. Another way to do that is if you had all these, if you just hit Option on your bottom layer, hold down Option and click that, you're going to see everything disappear. Right? So boom. Nice, clean retouch. So now that we've cleaned it up, now I think we need to kind of add some contrast and some contouring and start to put a little bit of flavor on this thing. When I look at it, especially when I was pulling back, I could see kind of in these shadows, especially in the nose, that this is almost like going to like a little bit more of a gray. I don't know if that's the makeup. I'm assuming it is, but as you can see, like that color compared to here in her cheeks, I'd rather have that be a little bit more red and uniform. So back to curves. And I'm going to go into my RGB, and maybe we'll take the red and just bump up a little bit of red. Way too much. Just bump it up a little. Let's say there. And maybe the green channel, we'll go in and maybe add just like a tiny bit of magenta. Okay. Command I, I'm going to invert that. B goes back to my brush, opacity at 100. I want to make sure my pressure sensitive button's on. The flow, I'm going to hit Shift 03. That's going to give me 3%. And we're going to kind of do the exact same thing as we did before, but now we can just paint that color really nice and soft on here. Make sure that you are set to white here, since we're on black down here. And we're just going to paint in a little bit of that red magenta right in there. You can see that already looks better. So off, on, off, on, off, on. Maybe we went to, maybe it was more needed in the highlight, I think. So I'm going to hit X, and I'm going to paint that back out just a few strokes here on the shadow part. Okay, I'm going to hit X again, add some more red right in here to that shadow part, maybe a smidge right here, and right in here in this shadow part. Anywhere else? Right in here, okay, so you can see where the makeup actually looks too red there. So let's do the opposite, do another curves layer. Let's take the red, pull a little bit of that out, go to the green, let's see how that is. Same thing, really lightly paint just that spot where the makeup kind of bled over. And then maybe we can just drag this whole RGB curve down and darken it to help her out with her eyebrow, thicken it a little bit. I think that looks pretty good. There we go. And then I'm going to come, see, we still have all this open. We can still play with every one of these layers. And I think, to me, like this is still a little harsh right here and maybe a little harsh in here. So I'm going to go back to my up on the original, make sure I'm all white, make sure that my brush mode is set the right way. And I'm just going to paint a little bit of this lighter. Transition. Maybe just a tiny bit of this under eye bag. Soften it just a little bit. And you can do the curves the same way with the under eye if you want to kind of change the color without getting rid of it. Because sometimes they go a little gray depending on who the person is or if there's makeup or not makeup or whatever. But that looks pretty good to me. I'm noticing right here I got kind of a light spot, so I'm going to go back to my dark. I'm going to bring that back down just a little bit. I mean, you can nitpick this forever, but for the purpose of the video, I think I would like to get pretty nitpicky about it. And then that line, I mean, you still want to show it, but maybe we can soften it. So I'm going to go back to the light, just lighten it up a tiny tad bit. There we go. So you can still see that it has the mention that it sinks in a bit, and then it's got the highlight there as it would naturally. So that looks pretty good. Maybe right in here, I can do a little bit of lightening right here. And go to my dark and just darken that spot a little. Cool. All right, so now what I'm gonna do is Zoe Noble, I found a tutorial that she did on YouTube about a year or so ago, and she had a really nice action set up for luminosity masks using channels. And so she had a free download. I'll try to put a link in there. If not, just look for Zoe Noble, ZoeNoble, luminosity masks on YouTube, and she has a link. It's really great. So anyways, I'm going to go to my actions, and right here I'm going to do a stamp visible because I want it to pull the channels off of like a merged layer. So I'm going to do that, merge them down, but still have everything underneath, right? I'm going to come down here to my luminosity mask. So I want to highlight light, dark, and midtones. Shift click, highlight all three, hit play, let it run its thing. Boom. So now we go into channels and we have all these awesome masks already set up for lights, darks, midtones, you name it. And this is a really nice way to just select out highlight, shadows, and midtones if you want to like only affect certain areas with coloring, or if you want to brighten some areas, darken some areas, and really isolate all your different tones. So I like to start with like, you can click through and you can see how much, depending on the contrast, the less contrasty stuff is going to affect more. The more contrasty black and white is going to select less. So like right here, I can see in this light 3 that it's really going to pick this up and this up. So I'm going to command click this right here on that layer box. And you can see there's a few marching ants here and there. It doesn't look like a lot selected, but a lot will be affected. So with that selected, we're going to scroll up, click on RGB. Let's go back to our layers. We're going to throw a curves layer on this. And since I have the highlight selected, I want to push those highlights, lift those highlights, right? So same thing, I'm going to grab the midtones, just kind of bring them up, all right? Boom. Now those highlights are really popping. You can bring it way, way, way up, you know. If you need to bring them down, you can bring them down, but I want to bring them up. But it's a little too far, so good thing we have a layer mask here. It's black that I want to go back to. So I'm going to make sure I have a black brush, and like this highlight's a little too strong, I'm just going to paint it back, right? Sorry, wrong way. Paint it, paint it, paint it. Cool. This one's a little too strong, paint that, but I kind of like what it did everywhere else. Right here, maybe go back so it's not so harsh. And this kind of added a little bit of blotchy back in here, so we'll fix that. We'll go back and do another curves adjustment on that. You can actually get rid of this merge of it layer, because otherwise you can't go back below it. You can, but you won't see what it affects. So I liked what it did, but it kind of added some splotch. So I'm going to lift again, and I'm going to go back with a soft brush, and I'm just going to help this transition out. Right in here, right in here. It would help if I was on white. There we go. That's helping that. Lift that up in there. Just again, a lot of this comes with time and really understanding like the facial structure. So you just want to do it nice and slow and just make sure you're not going too far. It's like barbecue or crock pot. Low and slow is the way to go. Right in here I can see, no, it's, you know, it grabbed highlights from all over, so it could have affected some areas that I didn't really want it to affect, so now I can go back and fix that just by lightening up some of the splotchy stuff right around where it was contrasted more than I saw originally. But I think it did a nice job of adding just a little bit more contour and giving it a little bit more dimension. Okay. That looks pretty good. Let's back it up and see what it looks like from afar. Yeah, that looks pretty good. Okay, so now, one thing it will do as well is it will grab, on that light layer, it's going to grab the whites of the eyes and the catch lights. To me, I don't like the eyes that white, so I'm actually going to paint that back as well. And the catch light, right? It's too much. When it's white like that, it looks weird. Okay, cool. So now let's go back to our channels and let's go and do a dark version of what we just did. So I like, usually dark 4 is kind of where I go to. I'm going to command click that box, get marching ants. I'm going to go up to RGB, back to my layers, and do a down curve. Cool. So as you can see, that definitely darkened a lot, really the midtones. And that looks pretty good. Now if you don't want it to affect certain places, then you would just go back and paint it out. Right, so I don't really like it affecting the background because I really like the color that we had before from my preset. So I want to not change that too much. So I'm going to do 100% on my brush, 100% on my flow. Oops. Command Z because I messed up. Hit X and go back. I'm just going to paint the background back out. In fact, that might be kind of cool with like a little bit of a gradient, like one side a little bit lighter, one side darker. Yeah, maybe we'll run with that. And then somewhere in here, like in her hair, it got a little too dark, and I don't want to lose all that detail. I don't mind if some of it's lost here and there, but you know, why do we shoot with high-end cameras and expensive gear and all this if you're just going to muddy it all up, right? So, paint in, paint in. Okay, that looks pretty good. All right, I think we're getting to be done. So we're going to look at this as a before and after. Again, like I said, you can scroll all the way down to the bottom. Hit Option, hold it down, and hit this bottom eye, and you can do your before and after, before and after. And it looks pretty good. It maybe is still a little splotchy in here. So I'm going to do one more up curve. Go back to pressure sensitive, low flow. I'll look at this from afar. See, and it kind of like gives this weird shape in here. So I'm going to maybe lighten right here. Lighten right here, make sure this is a nice line there. Too far. Lighten up next to there. Okay. That looks pretty good. That highlight's a little too strong now. Let's see, what can we do about that? Let's do a blank layer. Let's do Option. Let's click a color that we like right there. Now we have that set in there. Let's go to blending mode and do color. Same thing, really light brush. Let's just slightly paint that color back on that highlight since it's a little too strong. Okay. All right, so off, on, off, on. Subtle, very subtle. Maybe we should do a little more. There we go. Looks pretty good. Okay, so from the beginning, off, on, off, on, off, on. Very nice. Okay, so now let's do our last step and go. Ever since this whole camera raw filter came out, I've like totally loved doing color grading in camera raw. You can do it with curves, you can do it with, you know, anything, color balance, hue saturation, selective color, gradient maps. You can kind of do your coloring however you want to do it, but I just really like the ease of the sliders in camera raw. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stamp visible this whole thing. Make sure I'm clicked on the top layer, option, I'm going to drop this down, merge visible. Now we have the whole thing stamped out, and I'm going to go filter to camera raw filter. Now we're back in camera raw. Here are all my presets. I don't know why Photoshop has been doing this. Okay, so I named her name's Hayden, so I just named it Hayden. So LMN, where I do not know my ABCs. Hayden, right there. Let's hit that. Okay, cool. So there we go. Super purple, more of a, I guess, kind of orange mixed with purple, which tends to be nice. But looking at it, it kind of mucked it up a little. So I might up my exposure slightly and play with these sliders now that we've done, you know, the retouching under it. But that looks pretty good. Even just like slight adjustments, we can hit OK on that. Cool. Alright, so now looking at it, now let's kind of go through and look at the final stuff. Now it seemed to make this a little darker in here, so maybe I'll bring that up just a little tiny bit. And just do a quick big soft brush right there. Lighten that up just a hair. Right there. Cool. Sorry, people are blowing me up right now. This looks like it could be a little bit lighter. Maybe this under here could be a little bit lighter now. But that looks pretty good. The other cool thing about really doing this, the Photoshop layer with Adobe Camera Raw, when you have your presets set in there, is say we do a stamp visible right here again, right? This way we have a base layer, and then you could Command J and then do your adjustment on top of that. And the cool thing about that is, you know, you do that, you can lower it if it's too strong. You know, you can kind of split the difference, because it's a little heavy-handed, right? So nothing, kind of bringing it in. It's kind of cool. Maybe we'll do 85%, 82%. Throw that lightning back on. All right. To me, that looks pretty cool. Yeah, I'm with it. I mean, this highlight kind of bugs me here, so I could probably fix that. I really wish it wasn't hitting her nose here, but that's my fault in camera when I was shooting. But aside from that, you get the point of how to do a good high-end retouch where you still have all this skin detail. My preset added some grain to it, which, you know, kind of makes it a little bit more real feeling to me. Gives it a little bit more of an organic, because we did do like such a perfect, so to say, retouch on it. But yeah, that's it. So thank you for watching, and I hope this helps you. I know it's a really, really long process and it takes forever, and most people are like, yeah, screw that, I'm not going to do that. But if you want it looking right and high-end, that's how you got to do it. So thanks again, guys, and this is Mike Coletta with Mike Coletta Images. I'll holler at you later.